Please ask questions. Oh, awesome. Please ask questions throughout, and please stay muted. And if our speakers would like to open up the floor for questions, I'll let you know. So what we wanted to talk about first is the steering committee's been working really hard for the past couple of years, formalizing our steering committee. So defining what roles and responsibilities are, who does what, that kind of thing. And so I wanted to quickly talk about what our roles are, where we're at, and then talk about recruitment because we will be recruiting soon. Just pull this up. So we have decided that our annual term will follow the fiscal year. So we'll have a July 1 to June 30 term. Each of our steering committee roles will have a 2-year term. Although if you join in one role and want to switch out, if there's something available and open, we're flexible with people wanting to change roles. So we'll have 2 co-chairs, and the co-chairs will convene and facilitate our steering committee meetings. We'll liaise with HR, so people and culture. So people and culture recently, in the last few years, started providing a budget, and they also are a lot more involved in our staff organization processes, which has been awesome. So we'll liaise with people and culture on the BRAG process, funding, and any other resources that we need. We'll help to develop our annual budget, and then we'll also be taking meeting minutes in our steering committee meetings. So right now, and we'll also be doing website maintenance. Right now, the 2 co-chairs are Hannah and me. We also will have communications that will be responsible for sending out communications related to upcoming meetings. Probably received a lot of communications from Susan. She's our communications person right now. So also communications around opportunities, that kind of thing, and surveys that go out, that, anything that we would have that's communication outward. We have finance that's going to manage our budget. So at some point, if we go back in person, we might be meeting in person when we're able to have some budget to provide funds for food and beverages, which is awesome. So our finance person helps to manage that budget document, enter the expenses and actuals, helps to organize the purchasing, all of for food and anything else that we do. I don't know if any of you were lucky enough to receive our pens a few years ago. We have BRAG pens and it was a blue pen for all your 700U needs, which is now obsolete, but they're still great pens. I think they're sitting in my office right now. So if we ever go back to campus, or if you're ever around campus, when I'm there, I've got a whole bunch to pass out to our membership, and they're really awesome. We have event planning, meeting planning, that's mostly about securing space, membership outreach coordinator. So around this time every year, we're going to be planning to do some recruitment for reaching out to get new members. And this person will also be representing BRAG in the monthly new employee orientation and also the council staff org meetings. And then we will have a note taker that's going to help out with taking notes as well. So right now we have Daniel in our finance, Sabina's in our outreach, Anissa's in our logistics, events, Brenda's our note taker, and Hannah and I will also be managing the recruitment process for this spring. So we have a number of open positions that we will be emailing out about, and our term, basically our idea, the process that we put together is we'll have a short Google form so you can express interest. We have a desire to have a diverse committee that's both among research administrations. We know how huge of a community it is and how we all do different parts of it to make the whole thing run, but also ethnic, racial, gender, all of that diversity as well in our committee. And we'll be sending out an email through our communications person, letting people know that we have a certain number of positions open, and then you can apply, quick Google form, and you can put down which positions you're interested in. Like I said before, there might be a situation where you want to do communications for a year and then logistics for a year. We're totally open to that. And if you'd like to stay on for more than 2 years, we're also totally open for that too. So we have the opportunity for members to continue their steering committee participation. I think that is it.
All right.
Kate, did you want to go over a quick rough timeline of when the form will be available, when it's due, and then when decisions will be made or announced?
Sure. Let me see if I have that open. Okay, so we plan to, right now we're checking in with our current steering committee members, seeing who is interested in continuing membership and see who's interested in rotating off at the end of June. We're hoping to finalize that process in early February, and we'll be developing our form all throughout February as well. We're hoping to get the form out in early March, and then we'll have applications. I mean, the current timeline is applications will be open until about March 31st. We can, we might be flexible on that as well, but we'll put that all in the email once we finalize that date. During April, we're going to be discussing applicants, and in May, we'll issue appointment letters and make selections, issue appointment letters, and then notify the applicants who are not selected, as well as those who are selected, and encourage the applicants who are not selected to reapply next year, because we really do want you on the committee, but we're also trying to keep it a reasonable size. So we decided around 12 is our reasonable size for what we think our needs are right now. That could also change. And then the new Bragg members would start on July 1st. We are currently fully remote right now. I don't see that changing. But yeah. So it's a very exciting opportunity, and happy to answer questions if anybody has any. Not sure. If not, then I'm happy to turn it over to Hannah, who's representing the Share region, and Sarah, who is representing URSO, and they're going to give us a really exciting talk about cost share, which is, like Sabina said, useful for everyone in research administration. Turn it over to you.
Thank you, Kate. For those of you who have taken the cost share course in the RAPDP curriculum, you should be familiar with Sarah and myself. We are the co-instructors. We've been teaching cost share for, I don't know, a few years now. I've been teaching cost share since the inception of the RAPDP program. So yeah, we're really excited to do just this quick overview. We will be going through pre-award and post-award together. As Kate mentioned, Sarah is with the URSO region, I'm with the Share region. So in the RAPDP course, we really go into the URSO budget form and the BRS budget form. We do not go into the budget forms today, but we can take questions on them. Sarah, did you have anything to add before we get started?
No, but hello, welcome everyone. I would just add to that, if you do want a refresher in cost share, please feel free to attend the RAPDP sessions. It isn't just for new RAs, right? We can all come in and take refreshers in those classes too.
Absolutely. Policies and procedures change so often in research administration. It's really important to retake that curriculum. Okay, can everybody see my screen? It says cost share brief overview. Okay, yes. Wonderful, thank you. Okay, so, there we go. Okay, so what is cost share? Cost share, also known as matching funds, is the portion of research costs that are not covered by the sponsor. That means somebody else is footing the bill for those expenses. That could be the university, that could be a third party, that could be your subcontractor, which is also a third party. So mathematically, we have the sponsor request, which is what the sponsor is going to pay for, plus the cost share, which is other resources, other financial contributions to the project. And that added together equals your total project cost. It's really important to remember that institutional support is not cost share. This gets confused a lot, which is understandable. Institutional support is a qualitative description of the support being provided. Cost share is quantitative. It is always quantitative. Institutional support, the easiest example would be the facilities, equipment, and other resource section of a National Science Foundation proposal. That document that describes the resources available to the research team or the principal investigator that the university has, their office, their computer, their lab space, all that stuff. Okay. There are different types of cost share. The two most basic types are mandatory versus voluntary. Mandatory is easy to spot because in the RFP or solicitation, it will clearly state that a certain percentage of the total project cost must be from cost share. Typically, I see anywhere from 10 to 20% of the total project cost comes from cost share. and the sponsor will cover about 80% of the total project cost. Voluntary is when it is not mandatory. Either cost share is not mentioned at all in the solicitation, or that it's encouraged but not required. Some sponsors give extra evaluation points to proposals that have a cost share commitment. And again, cost share is always quantitative. If you say the PI will provide overall direction and oversight of the project at no cost, that is a qualitative description. It is not cost share. But once you say something like the PI will provide 10% of their academic salary as cost share, that is quantifiable. It's quantified, you can do the calculation, it's on our general ledger, it is cost share. Okay, so regardless of whether it's mandatory or voluntary, we also have internal versus external cost share. Internal cost share is everything that's on the UC Berkeley general ledger. This can come from discretionary funds from the PI or department funds, and it usually consists of things like salary, travel, supplies, etc. We can also provide facilities and administration, also known as indirect costs, as cost share, which I will go into detail at the next slide. External cost share is cost share being provided by a non-UC Berkeley entity, whether that's a subrecipient or a non-UC collaborator, like an industry partner. Let's say Google wants to give you $10,000 to create your project. That's great. That's awesome. It's never going to be on our ledger. And so it's not UC Berkeley. It's a third party. And that, instead of tracking it on the general ledger, the commitment is provided by a letter, and it is reported by a letter with a letter from the third party saying, like, yes, we have provided this cost share. F&A is cost share. F&A is also known as indirect costs. It stands for facilities and administrative costs. There are two ways that indirect costs can be reported as cost share. The first one is called waived F&A or unrecovered F&A. This one is not as common as the second one. And this is the difference between UC Berkeley's negotiated rate and the sponsor's lower F&A rate. It has to be approved by the sponsor. Some sponsors do not allow indirect costs at all to be provided as cost share, so you want to make sure that they understand that. Then you would also have to get approval by the UC, and this follows the same requirements as a vital interest waiver. And so an example of when you would have waived F&A or unrecovered F&A is the Annie E. Casey Foundation. They typically cap their indirect costs allowed to be charged at 10% total direct costs. With all the approvals in place, you can report the difference in IDC as cost share. So you take our current 60.5 modified total direct costs minus the 10% total direct costs. As you can imagine, there's a lot of manual calculation and tracking by the research administrator in this scenario. Contributed F&A is much more common. It's a little more simpler. It is based upon the applicable direct costs when the fund source does not accrue F&A. So, and again, it has to also be approved by the sponsor. An example would be that, let's say you're applying to the Annie E. Casey Foundation that has a 10% total direct cost rate assessed. The $10,000 that your PI is providing from their 19900 funds, that $10,000 in direct costs will be charged to 19900. But because 19900 in itself does not naturally accrue indirect costs, the RA would then manually calculate how much IDC would have been assessed if those direct costs were charged directly to the grant. Clear as mud, right? Okay, before I hand it over to Sarah, that's kind of like the nitty-gritty of the different types of cost share, mandatory versus voluntary, internal versus external, and then using indirect costs as cost share. Before we move on to the actual proposal submission and fund management aspect of this, does anyone have any questions they would like us to field now? I do not have my chat open, so somebody tell me.
I'll tell you if something pops in the chat.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. But there's nothing.
Well, so
So it's
there's
like
nothing.
everyone's like, I do understand mud. It is clear.
That's
Oh, there's one.
wonderful.
Oh, and it's from Varun. So Varun asks or says, the rate to calculate waived F&A does depend on the type of award. Research on-campus awards would use 60.5%.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
The rate to calculate waived F&A does depend on the type of award. Research on-campus awards would use our normal negotiated rate of 60.5.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Vern. That is correct. If this is on campus, we would use the standard 60.5%. If the award was off campus, the IDC is still capped at 10% because that's the sponsor cap. And then because it's off campus, you would use our standard off campus rate, which is 26%.
Correct.
Minus 26% modified total direct costs minus 10% total direct cost. Thank you, Varun.
Another comment real quick was, I always thought contributed F&A used our negotiated rate, not the sponsored rate.
No, the contributed F&A, which is source, like if it's like a research gift fund or 19900 fund, you can only request the IDC up to the sponsor's rate. If the sponsor doesn't have a cap and the full rate is our full 60.5 on campus rate, you would use 60.5. You just have to use whatever the indirect cost rate is on the grant.
Cool.
Excellent. All right. Well, then I'm going to hand it over to Sarah to talk about this. Sarah, just say next slide and I'll click it.
I was like, can I just say next slide? Lovely. Wonderful. Okay. So at proposal stage. So here we go. SPO, IAO is going to require that all cost share commitment is documented and uploaded into the Phoebe record. You can combine them all into one big PDF and stick them in the record as the other category and say, this is all the cost share commitment. There is, in the questions tab, there is a question that says, is there cost share on this project? You have to click the little radio dial button and say yes. And then in the attachments tab, along with your commitment letters, you also need to attach the cost share budget. And this can be either a separate budget showing the cost share, or it can be combined with the sponsor request on the BRS budget form. In your budget justification, there should also be a very clear section, justifying the cost share portion of the project. All I have for this slide. Hannah, did you want to chime in about anything?
Yeah, I did want to chime in because we were discussing the slide earlier about combining cost share with the sponsor request on the BRS budget form. It is allowable. It can happen, but you have to be really careful. If you are providing salary to a non-federal sponsor, you do not want to combine them. And that is because on our BRS budget form, for those familiar with it, the UCRP and Gale charges are lumped together based on the total salary and not broken up. So your cost share calculations may be incorrect because of those small amounts that are lump sum together. I always recommend doing two separate budget forms, but if you do want to combine them into one, there is a chance you can. And I would recommend having your supervisor, or even I will review your budget form for you if you want. It's not a big deal. Yeah, I'm always happy to help and review. So yeah, that's all there is. It's available. It can happen. Whether or not it should is a different matter.
But mostly, right? Our central offices, and us, because it helps both pre and post award side. You want to have it very clearly delineated what your sponsor request is, what you're asking directly from the sponsor versus what you're providing in cost share. And that should be very clear in the budget documents, in the cost share commitment letters, as well as in your budget justification. Sometimes the sponsors will have like their own sponsor form that you also need to fill in for cost share. So just like normal, read the solicitation. We know this is RAs. Read the solicitation, find out what it needs. and then upload those things into Phoebe.
There is one small point in Phoebe that I forgot to put a bullet point on here for, which I will change. I will adjust in the future. But on the financial tab, when you list out the total dollar of the award, you only want to list the sponsor request.
Sure.
You do not want to list the total project, sponsor and cost share combined, just the sponsor request. Because when the PAS release is released, that amount on the financial tab is the awarded amount, and then there's going to be a separate section for the cost share.
Good point. Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Daniel.
Or more just of a confirmation. Can you confirm, and maybe you already went over this, so my apologies, that a cost share commitment letter, if a sponsor has a weaker kind of, you just need to give us a sentence that says you're going to be committing cost share. Berkeley, the cost share letter, Berkeley's policy will always trump that in terms of needing a cost share letter signed by the department.
I was like, that's a good question. Right. So the letters aren't going to always go to the sponsor. Hashtag it depends if the sponsor wants those letters or not. Right. I would say for internal purposes, get as much detail in that letter, get it signed off, get the chart string if you can, get the numbers if you can, because the more detail, the better. It's going to make it way easier on post-award side if you have that information, which we'll talk about in the next slide or two. But if the sponsor is only asking for like, hey, I just need you to confirm that you're going to be able to provide X amount of cost share for this project, and they just need that like statement in the proposal, then fine, that's all it needs to be done in the proposal. But we should have those very clearly detailed documented letters in the Phoebe record.
Yeah, I was going to say not all cost share letters are going to go to sponsor, but SPO and IAO will require, for internal purposes, we do have to have that official cost share letter signed and on letterhead. And as Sarah mentioned, with as much detail as possible, if you can get the chart string in there, great. The more detailed of a letter and clearly explained and delineated budgets that we have at the pre-award stage is going to help in the post-award stage. Whether that's you or somebody else, you want to save them the sanity of trying to figure out the cost share or remember what you were doing if you're cradle to grave.
Yeah, good question though. Any more on proposal side? I don't think, yeah, because we go to cost share post-award side right after this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so yay, you've been awarded. Well, your faculty is awarded, but let's be real, we are all kind of awarded as well. So now you're going to try and get this all set up so you can manage it. This is the cost share setup. So you get your PAS, your Phoebe award summary. You want to make sure that it's actually listed in there. Sometimes it gets missed. That's fine. Just email and get it updated, make sure it's on that PAS, because that's what's going to notify CGA that it's in there in the record, that this is part of the award. Then you want to go confirm those chart strings, right? So if you've got that funding information in the pre-award phase in that letter, even better, because then you can say, hey, look, this is what you said you were able to provide. Is it still cool? This amount, this funding source? If you didn't get the chart string, then confirm it, get it, and then submit that mapping request in the BFS RA Grants Work Center so that you can map those non-sponsored funds with the cost share CF1, which is in BFS as well. And then you want to be able to map them so that you can start charging on those funds for the cost share fulfillment. All the expenses that are reported as cost share should have that cost share CF1. That's why they're created. That's why we have them, to make the reporting a bit more easy, because then you can just go to Cal Answers, run the CF1, and you should be able to see everything associated with the cost share on that project. And then, of course, you're going to want to work with your department or financial analyst in the department, or whomever is managing those non-sponsored funds to be used as cost share fulfillment, and discuss who will be responsible for doing those operating transfers to the cost share CF1. I do want to mention real quick on the PAS, on the Phoebe award summary, there could be potentially up to 3 lines showing cost share. It could be one for university. That's like faculty effort, PI's discretionary funds. Third party, pretty self-explanatory. If it's coming from a third party, you'll see a third party line. And then there's the VCR or central or research center, central campus line. And that's if you're going to get any funds from the VCRO to support the cost share. So you can see potentially up to 3 lines of cost share on the PAS. And all the university funds are going to be all lumped in. So if you have 10 PIs and co-PIs all committing cost share, it'll just be one lump sum number on the PAS. Just a little tidbit for you.
And another thing to remember is that once that cost share CF1 is is mapped to a non-sponsored award, that line for the department is going to act like a grant, which means that it's going to have the PC chart fields. And once the sponsored award that they're providing cost share for is closed and inactivated, nothing can happen on that particular line on the department funds. So it's really important to work with your department finance or your department or finance analyst, whoever manages those departmental funds, to make sure that the budget is allocated to that cost share CF1 and that all of the expenses are there and everything's good. Yes, Gia, thank you. Cost share CF1 is super important. We implemented it because of an internal audit. It's really important that we can't charge the same expense as cost share to 2 different awards, which is why every award has a unique cost share CF1 when there's cost share.
Also, to Gia's point, it's the cost share CF1 super important too, because if you need to, if you're going to cost share payroll or anything in recharges, you have to actually go in and get all of those chart strings updated with the chart string that has that cost share CF1. So it is being recorded as cost share.
Yeah, because when you submit your cost share report, CG is going to look at the general ledger for just that cost share CF1. And if there are no expenses on there, but your report shows that you have like $50,000 in cost share, there's going to be a lot of questions, or you're going to have a lot of transactions too, because again, everything must be on that cost share CF1. Great comment, Gia. Thank you.
It is no fun.
It is no fun.
It's no fun. All right. Reporting cost share.
Oops. Whoops. Oh, what did I do? Hold on. How do I get this out?
We are taking questions. We're just not at that slide.
Yeah, I know. Why don't we? Hold on. It won't get out of. Oh, there it is.
I'll just start talking about it. We already kind of touched on this, right? So when you're reporting cost
There
share,
you
you want to run that GL, right? The Cal Answers reports, you want to run it just for that cost share CF1 so you can pull everything. As we kind of touched on waived and contributed IDC, you can actually record and you'll have to manually calculate that IDC to be reported if that's applicable to your project. You can certainly well, that's fine. I'll just leave that alone. If you have third-party cost share on your project, you'll need to reach out to those third parties or non-UCB cost share contributors. There we go. For a letter confirming their cost share fulfillment for that period, that month. You'll need to attach that as part of your backup when submitting the cost share contribution report. And then, of course, you'll need to complete the cost share contribution report and do all the math in there, get it all nice and pretty, get all the signatures and submit it to CGA for their review.
I just had a comment from Eric. Make sure the PI is aware and knows the cost share CF1. Yes, thank you, Eric. This is really important. The department and the PI, they need to know the full chart string, the importance of this cost share CF1 and the role that it plays. Okay, we just had a question from Brenda. The cost share should be transferred to the research depth ID and PICF2 also, correct? I'm going to use Sarah's phrase, hashtag it depends. So really the department is going to provide the chart string. We're just adding a CF1. So if there is a CF2, we can add it, we can include it. If you look up the cost share CF1, it connects it to a specific sponsored award, and you can look up that sponsored award to find out who the PI is. The CF2 is optional. The CF2 is helpful if you want it to be shown in PI portfolio for the PI. If it doesn't have the PI CF2, it will not appear in PI portfolio, but it will appear in CalAnswers General Ledger. Thank you, Brenda. Great question. Any other questions before we move on?
Ooh, Sue, that is fabulous. That is on our next slide.
Okay, I'm gonna go to the next slide then.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's that bolded point right at the bottom. So the general rule of thumb for cost share, right, is if it's unallowable on the main sponsored grant, it cannot be used as cost share. As soon as you stick that CF1 making for a cost share fund, you are making it act like the grant, just like Hannah said. So if it's not allowable on the main sponsored fund, you can't use it as cost share.
I have run into the situation where like the sponsor doesn't allow fee remission or tuition payment. So we would go back to the sponsor during the proposal stage. We went to the sponsor and said, you do not allow these on your grant. Is it allowable to charge it as cost share because it is a benefit to the project? Like 9 times out of 10, they're going to say yes, but it's always good to ask them and have that on record.
Absolutely. Okay, so just a few other random fun tidbits about cost share to remember. A federal fund cannot be used as cost share to another federal fund. A cost share expense can't be reported as cost share for more than one project. If this is for a federal grant, Gale and UCRP, which are assessed for non-federal funding sources, they are not allowed to be used as cost share. If your main sponsor is DOE, say, and you're using discretionary funds for payroll to fulfill cost share, you cannot claim Gale and UCRP as cost share fulfillment. You'd have to manually exclude that when you're doing your cost share contribution reports.
If it's included on the cost share report, CGA will return it and ask you and tell you to remove them because they are not allowed.
Not allowed.
I wanted to add that Ann Oakenfull had a question. She said, should the cost share be on a research department ID? I think all departments do separate research versus other for department IDs. It should be, yes?
I mean, that's up to the department on whether where they want the cost share to come from, because yeah, if they want to transfer budget from their non-research depth ID to a research depth ID with a cost share CF1, that's fine. We just need to know what fund, depth ID, program code, and CF2 are associated, need to be mapped with that cost share CF1.
No problem.
Awesome.
Okay, and then if cost share is on a federal grant, you will need to adjust your effort reporting for any salaries provided as cost share. So this doesn't automatically feed into the ERS. So if you do have cost share for a federal project, you'll need to go into the effort reporting system and manually adjust that to reflect the cost share. And then just because I want to belabor the point, again, a general rule of thumb, if it's not allowed on the grant, it's not allowed to be used as cost share fulfillment. Woohoo.
And that brings us to the end of our presentation. So if you have any other questions, we may have answers. And then there is the cost share basics e-course that Sarah had mentioned earlier. It's online. It goes through the different types of cost share, all the risks and benefits, much more detailed than we did here, trust me. And then there is the instructor-led cost share course that Sarah and I teach. The next course should be around early May. It's usually 9 to 11 a.m. And we go in great detail with proposal submission, post-award management, cost share reporting, and the effort reporting. I can't believe there's not more questions.
I know. Oh, thank you, Kate. Yeah, as a reminder, we don't have cost share on industry funds with the exception of SRC. Yeah, I know that. I have a big old SRC award that has a lot of cost share.
And what does the acronym SRC stand for?
It's like the semi research conductor or something like that. Let me look. It's just
Semiconductor
SRC.
Research Center. Okay. Oh, wait. Can there be
See, I was
training?
almost there. Okay, so Vicky says, can there be a training on adjusting on effort reporting? Vicky, you're in URSO, so Kathy Weaver, actually, she's our effort report coordinator. She helps us with that. So she'll actually put on a training for the URSO region closer to April when the effort reporting cycle opens back up. And then there was another question. Can I ask a specific question about whether something is allowable?
We may not have the answer, but sure,
Yeah, it's like we have time. Shoot.
we have time.
Can you hear me? This is Renee.
Hi, Renee.
Oh,
Yes.
Hi, cool. So yeah, I don't get much cost share requests, fortunately for me. But every
Lucky.
time I do, it's like, something else, somebody comes up with something else. So this PI they can't use any personnel funds, and basically everything on there is personnel. So we figured out that we can use unrecovered F&A for 5%. So we're getting closer, but then they came back and said, can we find out how or if we can use equipment costs and associated labor as match funding? And then they say our team manages a physical data server that will be used in support of this project. How would we go about determining how to use that hardware for matching funds? And I'm like, oh man. And then I know like the facilities, like I'm thinking if they were a recharge unit or something like that, if they have a way to quantify that, would that be possible? Or I've never seen anything like that. So.
I was like, I haven't really either. I feel like you'd have to find some way to right, like you said, you'd have to find some way to quantify it, but then how to back up that quantified amount.
Yeah.
So recharge fees are pretty simple because you can contact that recharge unit and find out what the rate is and talk with the PI to see how many days are you going to be using this facility and then or whatever or equipment, and then the recharge, and you'll say like, oh, it's $200 a day and I'm going to use it for 5 days. So you just do the math. For equipment, it's a little trickier. I'm hoping our SPO people can maybe jump in on this, but I believe you need to I haven't done it, but I think you have to do some valuation of the equipment, and then you have to figure out how much is it going to be a benefit to the project, and yeah, and there's the whole devaluation rates because the equipment devalues as years go by. So I honestly have not done anything like that. If anyone is familiar with that process, please unmute yourself and let us know.
Yeah, I mean, they keep asking me how you do this, and I'm like, I don't even know that that's possible. I've never seen anything like that. And, I think they're just kind of trying desperately to find something to use since they don't have they can't use personnel. And, I just, I'm not sure. And they don't need a whole lot more money for the cost share because it's a small amount, but trying to scrape together that last bit seems to be, and I just can't think of anything else that they can use because it's only personnel. And
there's no supplies or
nothing on the budget.
Widgets.
Okay. No, and that's the thing. And it's I mean, the only thing is you guys were talking is this is it's non-federal. So now I'm wondering, could we use UCRP and Gale? Could that be used as cost share? I mean, we've got the approval to use the unrecovered F&A as cost share through SPO via checking with UCOP, but that doesn't quite do it. But I didn't even think of those two using as cost share, and who approves that? And, I don't know if that would push us over the limit or
so
not.
if you're providing salary as cost share support to a non-federal source, you can definitely include Gale and UCRP. Not all titles are eligible for UCRP benefits, so you'll want to double check all that.
Okay.
But the Gale and UCRP are pretty small, minimal amounts.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I don't think that would do it. So I think we're still, they're trying to figure out. And if it's equipment and stuff, they're saying is the server, whatever, will be used in the project, but it's like, was that purchased on federal funds? I mean, then you get into all these other questions. It seems to me
Yeah,
that
I
it get
mean,
really murky.
yeah, I try and stay away from like already purchased equipment being used as cost share, because it is really complicated to do that sort of equation, especially because a lot of times people get like an equipment grant to purchase said equipment, and it's more of an institutional support kind of thing.
Right,
It's,
right.
you know,
That's
yeah,
that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
to me, it would be, I mean, the people who own the equipment, are they able to provide any sort of quantitative measure or dollar value per daily use? I don't, you know, yeah. So if those sort of quantitative things are not solid, I would definitely steer away from using already purchased equipment as cost share.
Okay, well, I'll clarify with them exactly, like if they
Mhm.
use it as recharge, then it seems like it could be easier, and then they have to put together some kind of documentation as to, you know, what
Yeah.
they're using it for and all that. But yeah, so yeah, this was, and again, I think everybody's just trying to be creative, but it's like, yeah, it's been a tough one. So thank you guys for the input.
Sure thing. We do still have some time if you guys want, if you guys have any other questions. I'm going to stop my share.
Maybe we can ask our Bragg group what kind of topics they would be interested in us presenting on in future meetings, or if they're interested in, or I should say, and if they're interested in more research talks, and if so, if they have any ideas. We have some in mind, but we are looking to plan out the rest of the year. Would something on effort reporting be, I heard there was a question about effort reporting. It sounds like some of the regions or all the regions are doing training internally and coordination internally, but is that something that would be useful for folks?
No, URSA does training internally. Their payroll team takes a lead on effort reporting. I believe the other regions, the RAs do it. So,
Okay. Is that something that you think would be useful or helpful?
possibly.
I see some yeses and some head nods.
You guys can also use your reactions if you want to do like a thumbs up or, you know, pressure, effort reporting. So yeah, it sounds like effort reporting would be good.
And thinking of, oops, sorry. Thinking of what perspectives would it be helpful to have CGA and RA perspectives together?
For effort reporting?
Yeah. Or RA only, CGA only, something combined.
We can do combined. If Varun's still on the call, maybe he can chime in. I don't know how involved CGA analysts are with effort reporting. I don't know if Varun's still here. I can definitely, we can reach out to the effort reporting folks at CGA.
Okay.
My group had talked about in our group meeting today about some of these topics, and one of the suggestions, in addition to the overhead rate negotiation, you know, how that's done, the topic came up about the negotiated employee benefit rate and how that works.
Oh, the CBRs?
Yeah.
Mm. Oh, thanks for Varun just chatted. I should let his comment. His mic was off. Okay, yeah, the analysts are not too involved, but I believe there is a team at CGA that works on the effort reporting. So maybe we can reach out to them. Or maybe Sarah can convince Kathy to come give a presentation. I'm joking.
I'll see what I can do. We've actually, just to chime in here, we've actually had a lot of e-verify stuff recently come through our office. I haven't seen that in quite a while. So I'm wondering, is that common with other folks in the other regions, or is this just these weird DOE projects we're getting through or so?
I haven't personally dealt with it, so maybe just the
Maybe it's just us.
DOE
Weird.
projects.
Weird.
Sabina, are you seeing that from the SPO side or hearing about it from the SPO side? And anybody else who's here from SPO?
I was gonna say, just my hunch feeling is that a bunch of CGOs decided to put on PAS. But I didn't see any a specific requirement that's new. So that's my take.
And we also have a suggestion about best practices of financial reports to PIs.
Yeah, we can do that. I mean, that is different within each region, but we can definitely give like a very basic best practice. At a minimum, you should be providing X, Y, and Z. Yeah, we can definitely do that.
Do you think it would be helpful just in terms of building community for different regions to talk about the different approaches that they have within their region?
I think that would be fantastic if we could get a rep from each region. There's a lot of similarities, but there's a lot of differences also between the regions. Kate, are you taking notes on these?
Well, I think Brenda's our note taker, but I'm taking
Okay.
notes on this particular one.
Okay.
Oh, let me just.
It's still 1:30. Okay.
We also had partnered with SPO last fall on kind of a brown bag lunch and learn kind of thing. And Noam, Peter, and I did a presentation on intellectual property. Are there topics like that that you're interested or that anyone's interested in that could be a SPO or an IAO or a combined kind of agreement, terms and conditions, or things like that type of topic?
Refresher on MTAs may be useful. I know like RAs aren't usually involved in that. The PI can do their request directly with IAO, but then sometimes you get when the PAS is released, you're like, oh my gosh, what did my PI do? And then you see that it's just like an MTA or something. You're like, oh, okay, never mind. So something like that would be helpful.
So I know we've done them at RAC forums and more looking at process. Do you think folks would be interested in, backing up. I'm putting together a presentation for SRA that is going to do a webinar with a colleague in Kentucky. I think we're going to push it out further, but we're doing a webinar on MTAs and DUAs, data use and transfer agreements and material transfer agreements. And it's more about what they, like the content of them, to understand a little bit more about what they are. Would that be interesting, or is that kind of too much in the weeds?
I mean, personally, I would find that interesting, but I don't know. I don't know the general consensus, but I would be interested in that. Because I've opened up a few MTAs and I'm just like, what is this? Sarah suggested IUTs. Always IUTs. Always good to have a refresher on that for the agreements between the labs and UC.
Would it be helpful also to do maybe a broader presentation of working with national labs? Because LB&L, we have IUTs and the funds and memorandum agreement for sending money up. But then we work with a lot of other national labs where it can be very challenging.
I think that would be great. Maybe focused on LB&L because that's like the primary one, but it'd be good to include the other labs. Gia said, I have a lot of discussion with SPO about gifts versus grants. Some pots of money blur the line on the definition. I think that would be a really good one. Maybe we can get somebody from the development office in to talk about the gift side. I know some sponsors use really vague language, like they call it an award, but then it's really a gift. Google does that a lot.
We had a presentation at the RAC forum I don't remember when, December before, on
Mhm.
gifts versus grants.
Mhm.
We could invite the same people potentially who did that presentation. I think it was Lynn Hollier in my office and Allie in UDAR, and then make it more of a discussion too. So instead of just presenting information to the group, open it up and we could let folks know in advance, you can come up with your questions.
Mhm.
That would be good because it could be a follow-on, maybe a refresher and then a follow-on to the Rock Forum, which is a great opportunity for the space.
Yeah, that would be great. Amaya suggested managing PI's effort commitment, like FESREP summer salary, especially when they are overcommitted.
Which we know happens.
Yes. So I like to track, I've started tracking my PI's commitments at the proposal stage. So that way I'm like, no. If you get these other 2 grants, you're overcommitted. So it's always good to be proactive with that. Okay. All right, well, we're just about time. I'm going to drop this link in chat to fill out our survey on today's meeting. It will be sent from Susan via email, since she's our communications person. So if you miss it here, it'll be in an email. You can fill out a quick little form to say how wonderful Sarah and I did and how wonderful Kate's presentation was, and to let us know any suggestions for future topics. Also let us know if you're interested in a PI presentation. You know, we can reach out to PIs and get them to present. For those of you who were at the Bragg meeting last time, we had, I'm blanking on his name. It was about fire prevention. Scott Stevens for fire prevention and safety. It was really fascinating to see how they like monitor the forest on fire safety. So it was really neat. So if you have any topics like that, research topics you want to hear on, we can reach out to PIs and ask them to give a quick 20-30 minute layman presentation of their research to us.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you, Hannah.
All right.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, everyone. If you have any questions on cost share, feel free to reach out to Sarah or myself. And we look forward to seeing you at the next Bragg general meeting.
That's gonna be in March?
Sometime in March. We're still
Okay.
scheduling, so keep an eye out for that email.
All right, bye everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Next time.
Oh.